we can head into the recap of the conference tournaments, and I guess we can start things off with the SEC. Won by Tennessee, which is no surprise to anybody, I think. And they won most of their games pretty handily. But what say you?
Yeah, interesting tournament there. I don't think, obviously Tennessee winning was not a surprise, but I don't think the tournament went how a lot of people would have expected. I think we had a couple teams in the semifinals nobody would have thought would have been there, that being Kentucky, first of all, and then Florida as well. Florida, not as big of a underdog, but certainly not a team many people had make it into the semis of that tournament, and it ended up vying well for them as they earned their right into hosting a regional. So although it was sort of a chalked tournament with Tennessee winning it all, there certainly were some big implications in other places.
Yeah, definitely the surprise of the tournament for me was Kentucky making it as far as they did, but apparently it still wasn't good enough to make the NCAA tournament, which we can go into a little bit later. But going from there, we can head to the ACC, where this was kind of a jumbled mess. It didn't seem like it was going to be heading into it, but a lot of crazy upsets that happened, and North Carolina was able to put together a great run and win the tournament against NC State. With NC State, it looked like they were in a pretty good spot. They were like on the bubble, a fringe team before the conference tournament, but they also put together a very good run, making it to the finals. So I feel like most people and most projections had them easily into the NCAA tournament, but apparently the committee didn't think so, and they're probably the biggest snub of the field of 64 right now.
Yeah, it's just wild to not see NC State in there. Yeah, I think they're 32 in RPI, and then 14 and 15 in conference play during the regular season, then went 3-1 in the tourney. They seemed like an absolute lock to make it in, especially since they were in the championship game. On the other hand, props to North Carolina for running through the tourney and winning. This tournament was just crazy. For a reminder for any of the fans who haven't followed closely, this tournament was split into 4 pools of 3 teams, and then the top team made it out into semifinal play, single elimination, and only one of the top 4 seeds made it out of their pool. So a lot of upsets. It was a great weekend there in Charlotte.
Yeah, and like you said, this is also just a very favorable situation for the 1 seeds in each little pool, just because they get the head-to-head, essentially being the top seed. If everything is tied 1-1, everybody wins a game and loses a game, they get to go through as the top seed. So very surprising that so little of the best teams made it through, but great to see as a college baseball fan, those upsets. But going from there, we can head to the Pac-12, where another kind of chalk tournament, with the final being between Stanford and Oregon State. Very different setups to kind of get to that point, with Stanford having a pretty easy ride, not losing any games, while Oregon State just had an absolutely brutal stretch against UCLA with games going back and forth and just no pitching, it seemed like. But great final, a lot more honed in by the Oregon State pitching staff, and was close to winning it, but it was Stanford that was just able to get the edge, and you can kind of expect that from what happened to be the 2 and 3 national seeds, respectively, with Stanford being the 2. And Stanford gets the edge, but both teams played pretty well.
Yeah, like you mentioned, pretty chalk favorite tournament here, with both the finals of the 2 splits being Stanford, Arizona, which was the 1 and 5, and Oregon State, UCLA 2-3. So pretty favorable there. And then, yeah, had some craziness on the Oregon State UCLA side, with Oregon State blowing that late 9th inning lead. Crazy game, just so many runs, so many pitches thrown. Oregon State was absolutely wiped out after playing those 2 games, and I'm honestly surprised they played as well as they did on Sunday against Stanford. It was actually pretty impressive, but I would say overall for the weekend, not exactly what Oregon State wanted, not winning the tournament, and also had some injuries pop up on that roster. So all in all, not really great for them, but in the end, it was Stanford winning it, as we suspected would happen.
Yeah, it did seem like the Oregon State pitching staff and just overall had a tough weekend with injuries and that kind of stuff, but didn't seem as bad as it potentially could have been, with a lot of those players coming back to play in the finals against Stanford, which is good to see. But UCLA and Oregon State was just an awful back and forth with so many injuries for Oregon State. So hopefully they can bounce back and kind of prove that they deserve to be that number 3 national seed. But after that, we can go to the Big 12, where we did pretty good on our predictions for this tournament. We said going in, Kevin went with Texas to win the finals, and I went Oklahoma, which happened to be the final matchup, with Oklahoma taking it. And very interesting that the 16 national seeds being announced early kind of messed with Oklahoma, because it seemed like they definitely deserved a chance to host, to at least be in the consideration, but that probably wasn't even an option at the time because the announcements were made before the end of their game.
Yeah, Oklahoma's been extremely hot to end the year, and I mean, heading into this tournament, I think we said it on our last week's episode, you could pick any of the top 5 teams and it'd be a pretty good guess, but we did pick the 2 finalists, so that was cool to see. But Oklahoma been playing extremely well. They end up winning the tournament, and with how well they've played as of late and them winning this tournament, they seemed like a deadlock to host. But like you mentioned, the committee has their discussions that Sunday evening before this game's over, so hard for them to put Oklahoma in a hosting spot, I guess, with that game not over yet. Just kind of crazy for them not to be hosting given the circumstances of how they ended the year.
Yeah, and luckily for the Pac-12, there weren't any of those kind of implications involved because their game was even later, but definitely something to revisit as just in general. It's very strange that things are being announced before everything's finalized. But from there, we can go to the final Power 5 conference, being the Big Ten, where Michigan won against Rutgers in the final, which happened to be extremely costly for a Rutgers team, which had an amazing year and definitely deserved to be in the tournament, but somehow got left out, which probably is the second biggest snub of the year.
Yeah, I mean, Michigan played well to end the year, and they sweep through this tournament playing really well against top teams in the conference. So great for them to make the tournament, but Rutgers, on the other hand, like you mentioned, gets snubbed even though they made the championship of this conference tournament. It's kind of unfortunate for the Big Ten. I mean, even though you get Michigan in the tournament, you'd probably rather have Rutgers because they're the more well-rounded team that's played well throughout the entire season. So unfortunate for the conference overall, I'd say. And I mean, realistically, if things went how people thought it would go, they would have 3 teams in there with both Michigan and Rutgers making it in.
Definitely. And with Rutgers, they broke so many school records this past year. It is just crazy to think that they're not going to be in the tournament. But after that, the only other conference that I really want to highlight is the WCC, with San Diego making it through. They were a bubble team going into their conference tournament, but made sure that they were not going to miss out this time around by winning it all and making it a 2-bid league with Gonzaga as well.
Yeah, last couple of weeks they were sitting on that first 4 in and a lot of teams' projections, and then after losing to Gonzaga in their final weekend series, they slipped into that first 4 out for a lot of those projections, so it wasn't looking great for them. Knew they needed a good performance here, knew they probably needed to make the championship game at the minimum and probably would have to win it, so props to them for coming out on top, and awesome to see 2 teams coming out of the WCC, because I think we all believe that they do deserve 2 teams out of there.
Yeah, those were the favorites before the season, and halfway through it seemed like those teams were just miles ahead of everybody else, but was a little bit tight in the end for San Diego, but luckily able to just solidify things completely by winning the conference tournament. But thank you for watching and listening. If you enjoyed, we would really appreciate a like and subscribe for more weekly college baseball content.